Hello fellow crazy Ultrawide users. Let's see how Assassin's Creed Shadows performs at the ridiculous 5120x2160p resolution. Let's start off looking at the base performance without any upscaling or frame generation. Here we are using ultra high settings with ray tracing on, as is on by default at every performance level. At a glance you can see that no cards get anywhere near 60 FPS. Only the 7900 XTX even clears 30, while the 4090 does get close to 30. Though the 4080 does get less close. 1% lows are all obviously below 30, but the 7900 XTXs are particularly bad. I believe this is because the AMD GPUs have higher CPU overheads, and we've finally gotten to a game where my 5800 X3D is no longer enough to keep up. You will see more evidence of why I say it's CPU related when we get to the frame gen results. Since none of our cards manage 60 FPS, let's turn on some quality upscaling to see if any of them make it across the line. Turning on quality upscaling for both DLSS and FSR puts the 7900 XTX and 4090 over the 45 FPS line, and while the 7900 XTX is still seeing 1% low troubles, the 4090 managed 1% lows over 30 FPS, meaning you can have a better than console experience with a variable refresh rate monitor with low frame rate compensation, which sadly there's only one at this resolution, and it's not yet released in all regions. The 4080 does manage to cross the 30 FPS line with its average, but its 1% lows are still sub 30. Since none of the cards actually reach 60, the cutoff for AMD and Nvidia's recommendation before turning on frame generation, let's try and find more FPS by dropping the settings to high. With high settings on, we finally see one card clear 60 FPS for their average. The 7900 XTX does manage to clear that mark, and its 1% lows do get better, with the settings drop improving from 1/3 of the average to half of the average FPS. The RTX 4090 is still sub 60 with its 1% lows also falling short of the next performance threshold. The 4080 now has both its average and 1% lows over 30 for console-like frame rates. Finally, with one of our cards clearing the 60 FPS mark, we can turn on frame generation to see what kind of performance jump we get. Assassin's Creed Shadows has integrated both DLSS and FSR frame gen, so this is one of the few games where the frame gen battle is a fair fight. The 7900 XTX and 4090 see big gains, with both cards clearing the 90 FPS mark for the averages, crossing the line into higher refresh rate territory. The 4090 is doing way better than I have seen in the past with NVIDIA frame generation. The new DLSS 4 enhanced frame gen is nearly twice as efficient as DLSS 3 frame gen was, which based on past performance would have struggled to get the 4090's 1% lows over 60. Speaking of 1% lows, we see the 700 XTX improve again, with 1% lows that go from being 1/2 of the average to 2/3 of the average FPS, clearing the 60 FPS mark. So you may be wondering how does 7900 XTX improve its 1% lows when frame gen is turned on, when the expectation is for a 10 to 15% performance hit to both the average and the 1% lows before the frames are doubled. Well, the average did see that performance hit, but somehow the 1% lows saw a 17% performance gain before being frame doubled. It didn't improve quite as much as it did at lower resolutions, but it's still a welcome improvement. The only explanation I have for this 1% low improvement is that the time between each regular frame when the GPU is working on the generated frame all by itself is enough time for the CPU to catch up and prepare the next regular frame for the GPU, relieving the CPU bottleneck some. So, amazingly, frame gen on is the smoothest and most responsive way to play with an AMD GPU if your CPU is a little on the slow side. The RTX 4090's 1% lows have moved well past the 60 FPS mark and is on its way to high refresh rate territory, while the 4080 is clearing 60 for both its average and 1% lows, providing a smooth visual experience. Now, let's look at the performance uplift at each performance setting. We see some of our biggest gains turning on quality upscaling, and going deeper with either balanced or performance DLSS is probably where I would go to get the 4090 and 4080 to hit 60 FPS natively. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos and want to catch some more, please subscribe so you don't miss out on any. The more of you that subscribe, the better the chance for me to get the attention of a GPU vendor and have them send me test samples. If you have a regular Ultrawide or a super Ultrawide and want to see those results, you can find them on my channel right now. If you want to help this channel out in other ways, you can become a member or sign up for Patreon or just use my Amazon affiliate link. I'm Scott, and I'll see you next time, Ultrawide fans.